To the Buddy Martin Show. I'm Buddy Martin. He is not. I've been waiting for a long time to get him back on the air. The superstar of media. He's as rock solid as the Rockies. You see him on Around the Horn. He is a happy dude, although you wouldn't know it by looking at him because his Tennessee Vols have just won the national championship in baseball. Congratulations, Woody, for that. And let's go live right now with Woody Paige coming up right now.
Or Buddy Martin, call him up and tell him what you're thinking, but be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Well, good evening and welcome to the program. I'm Buddy Martin. He's Woody Paige. It's going to be a fun time tonight. Joe, how you doing, buddy? You celebrating? Where's that orange drink?
Well, I'm not celebrating. I'm trying to watch the NBA draft. So I'm used to do on occasion.
I forgot
That's a
about
really impressive opening. If this show is anything close to your opening, this will be a great show.
It's not going to be.
You just showed me a view out your window of water, and I should turn my computer around so you could see Pikes Peak, because you used to see that out your window every day when you went to work.
Beautiful, yes. And by the way, I did, right, sitting out my window at Castle Pines.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Tonight, we are going to go down memory lane a little bit.
That's what I was afraid of. Tomorrow night's my birthday, and I really...
I know. Well, let me get to that. I was going to sing happy birthday to you.
Yeah.
Like I'll do it right now. Me. Happy birthday.
Don't do that. It's going to cost you.
No,
Don't do it.
Not anymore.
I tried on ESPN one day to do that.
Yeah,
There's a lady that collects money from
but
you.
not anymore. That's over with. It's done now.
Okay. Well,
So I can sing. I'm going to finish. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dro. That's what I call you. Happy birthday to you. And many more. What are you doing for your, what do you say, John Elway's 64 and you're 63, right?
yeah, today he's 64. He was born in 1960.
Mm-hmm.
John Elway. We start the program talking about John Elway. Yeah. Because I know people in Florida are really excited about talking about John Elway.
Well, we've talked about
Yes. Yesterday was media day for the FedEx Cup tournament that's coming up here.
Yeah.
BMW. And John Elway's very much involved in that. And when I last talked to him, he was playing golf every day. He spends a lot of time in Palm Springs and California and in Idaho. There's a great golf course in Idaho, and he seems to be enjoying his retirement. And I think I have an amazing story for you. Nobody cares. Nobody else cares, but he's got...
We care. This is for us. This is our show tonight.
Well, I don't care. I knew it. He has 7 grandchildren.
Did not know that.
Well, that's why I'm helping you out here. Can you imagine people who don't even have to be our age group, but people who saw John Elway? It's hard to think about him being the grandfather of 7 kids.
Mm-hmm.
I can picture you as a grandfather. You can't ever picture me. I'll never be a grandfather.
Yeah.
Anyway, John's enjoying his. So I'll ask you about Steve Spurrier. Have you seen him? Since it's about us. I grew up in Tennessee with Steve Spurrier on the other end of the state. I'm from Memphis, and Spurrier was from East Tennessee, but we met in high school, and I always had a fondness for Steve, and I wonder where he is now.
Well, he has got quite a story to tell now. He, of course, as you know, is the ambassador in Florida, and the field is named after him. And he and a guy named Freddie Weeby started a restaurant called Steve Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, which is now the #1 celebrity restaurant in the country. In Gainesville, it is amazing. Freddie's a smart guy. They've got some neat things. It's like a museum. He's got all kind of stuff in there, beautifully done. Food is very good. Dawn and I ate there about a month ago. Very good. In fact, I even have a couple of things.
Where is it?
It's in Gainesville, it's right in Gainesville. And it's a destination place. Here's the cool part about it. Freddie Weeby is a smart guy. He spent $1 million on research, and he wanted all ideas. I said, here's a menu item for you. Because Joe Biddle told me about the days when Steve and he used to play, and he used to don't throw that ball scrap on the floor. That's disrespectful.
I wanted you to see my face. Last time I was over with you.
You look better. You look better.
I'm in the dark. I don't need great light like you do in order to.
Well, that's all right. You look pretty good for a guy who's 64. Anyway, to tell the story, you'll like this because Joe Biddle, you remember Joe, grew up with Steve in Johnson City. They used to go play in the summertime, come back to his house and drink and eat tomato sandwiches and drink cold milk. And so I suggested to them, you know what? You guys ought to have a Johnson City tomato sandwich on the menu. And they do. And I told them about the Colorado Mining Company, Woody, and the famous peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which you introduced me to at $25 a pop. When Elvis would fly in there and order 50 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and take off, right?
Yeah. Elvis would only come on vacation. He would come to Colorado and he'd go to Hawaii. And people wondered why he never played around the world. And he couldn't because his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, was a legal alien. He sneaked into the country, and so he couldn't leave the country without being arrested. And he changed his name. He was from the Netherlands. And so Elvis always wanted to play Germany, where he served in the army, and he wanted to go places all over the world, like most rock artists do. And he could. So the only place he ever went outside of L.A. when he was making movies, in Vegas, where he appeared all the time, and Memphis, where he had the home Graceland, was Colorado. He'd come to Colorado all the time, or he'd go to Hawaii because he filmed at least 2 movies and did a great New Year's Eve special there. And I want to bring that up because I've got a book that's coming out.
Good. What's it going to be called, and where can we get it?
Well, I wanted to call it, and you can believe me, but I wanted to call it. I wouldn't believe this shit either. But the publishers in New York said,
I didn't like that. I can't understand why.
Yeah, so it's called The Storyteller, because that's what I do is tell stories, and the subtitle is From Elvis to ESPN, because I grew up in a housing project and would go like 2 doors over. It's a rather large government housing project. You couldn't, if you made over $30 a month, you couldn't live there. Now, this is going back to the late 40s and early 50s. And I used to play in the weeds across the street, and those weeds are now St. Jude's Hospital. And Danny Thomas was appearing in Memphis at one point in his career, and his career was going in the tank. And he went to this land where I would play in the weeds, not because I was there. And he looked up and he prayed to God and said, "You make me a success, and I'll come back on this site and build a hospital for children." And he became a very, as you know, the Danny Thomas show for people who watch television in the 60s. And he had a golf tournament, a PTA tournament, the Danny Thomas tournament, when they used to name him after Andy Williams and Sammy Davis Jr. and people like that. But he came back and he started what is the most famous children's hospital in the world. And nobody pays to go there. And so that's where I grew up playing, was in the weeds where St. Jude Hospital is. So that's across the street from where the project is. And it's still apartment buildings. And 2 doors away, Elvis, there was a guy. I didn't know who he was.
And you were in Tupelo then, right?
No, I was never in Tupelo.
But you were born in Tupelo, right?
This is Memphis, Tennessee, where St. Jude Hospital is.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess you don't know where it is. Let me say.
No. I was saying, but didn't you grow up in Tupelo?
No, I grew up from Tupelo. I grew up in Memphis. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, Elvis did it.
So anyway, I would go down to apartment buildings. They were small apartments, 2 stories high. And I'd sit in the grass and listen to this high school kid who had greasy black hair, plays guitar and sings songs. And I go home, and this was a period of time in American history where people didn't really care about their kids. I mean, you could wander off down the street because nobody was, picking up kids and kidnapping them in the 50s, early 50s.
I know.
So I go home to my mom, and she goes, "Where you been?" And I'm either in the weeds or I'm down there listening to Elvis. And I said, "I'm listening to this kid down there. His name is Presley." And she said, "They're from Tupelo like your dad. And they're worthless. And that kid thinks he's going to be a rock and roll, a country and western singer," is what she said. And so that was the early 50s, and about 1954, 55, around the time he was on Ed Sullivan and became a success, we're driving down the street with our first car. It must have been 56. That's when my dad bought his first Ford. And pulling up next to us was a pink Ford convertible, and Elvis was driving. And I said, "There's that guy that you said wasn't going to be much of a country western singer." So I had a relationship with Elvis throughout my life, and I've had a relationship with ESPN the last 25 years of my life. So I've kind of combined that's part of it. But it's not a autobiography. It's not even memoirs.
Yeah. It's going to be a good read. I look forward to reading it. And for those people who don't know, Woody also went to the University of Tennessee, and where Paul Feinbaum went to school. When Paul Feinbaum was there, he was told by the SID, "I thought Woody Paige was the worst guy to ever come through here until you."
Paul tells the story a little differently. They told him, and
But anyway, you had a very successful career.
His story is when he went in, they said, "Don't try to be another Woody Paige."
Yeah.
Because I was editor of the daily paper.
Right.
And they wanted me to work in the SEID's office. And
right.
I'm going to put out a newspaper. And then
right.
There was Florida. The people in Florida has a daily newspaper, a student newspaper. But
how we got together was you were very successful in Knoxville, and you went to Denver to a paper called the Rocky Mountain News, where you were the star of the city of Denver. And then the Los Angeles, I'm giving people background here. Los Angeles Times.
I went to Memphis after college and worked for the Memphis Commercial too.
Okay. And then you were hired by the Rocky Mountain News.
I covered SEC football. So
right. And then you came there and you had a little different take on. Steve Spurrier says you either outwork everybody or be different. You chose to be different, and you worked hard. And you wound up being the star of the Denver media. And when the Denver Post was bought by the Los Angeles Times, they took out a check and gave it to you. And you made the front page of the Wall Street Journal for the amount of money that you were making at that time. And about that time, about a month later after you've been hired, I wound up getting hired by the Denver Post as a inside sports editor. And one day they said to me, "We're going to fire the columnist. We'd like you to write the other column." So, okay, let me think about that. So I did. And you and I had a great run together. I had many. Just the other day, I finally got one of those big posters that we had on the side of the bus. It's plastic. And I went to put it in my car, and it broke in half. And I threw it in the garbage can with our pictures on it. But you were the star. I was in we had a heck of a run. We traveled all over the country doing stories. We have Albuquerque we had Final Fours. We had a great run. So for me,
but tell the funny stories. There's a commercial on television now for one of the hotel chains, and they go, "You want to stay at an Airbnb because when you go to a hotel and you got your family with you, and you say you're on this, you want to be next door to each other with an adjoining door, and you see the kids in another building waving at the parents who are put in one building and the kids are put in another building." You and I went to cover U.S. Open out in California, and they had 2 rooms for us. And one of us, I don't know which one of us, said, well, "Can you put us like next to each other because we're going to hang out all the time?" And they said, "Yeah, we can put you on the same floor." They didn't tell us that they put us on the same floor in different buildings. And so when I see this commercial on TV, and everybody's seen it because it was during the NBA finals, or it's Wyndham Hotels or something saying.
That was great, and that was the U.S. Open that Tom Watson won.
Funny stories. See, you're telling the crap people don't want to know, but I will tell the funny stories that we.
Well, that's all right. I'll let you tell them. I'm going to brag on you a little bit because that was one of the great things.
Last month, other crap. Last month I was. These are 3-4 funny stories. Last month I was inducted into the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame, and people went, "Well, that's got to be the greatest honor in your life." I was inducted into the Jim Murray Hall of Fame. And people don't know, he had a foundation, and his family, Jim Murray, for people who don't know, is the best columnist in the history of the country. Red Smith, maybe. And Jim Murray's wife, his widow, started the Jim Murray Foundation, and they pick out 6 or 7 high school journalists a year, and they pay for their scholarships at school. And his wife was one of the greatest honors in my life, asked me to be a judge the first year. And I was so pleased that she asked me, and then she called and said, "We're starting a Hall of Fame. You're one of the first members." And I went, "Wow." That I think is even bigger. But you remember Bill Hanslick, who was a Notre Dame basketball player, and he went on, he had a good career in the NBA. He guarded Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was 6'7", and he gave, Jabbar said Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said he was the toughest defensive player because he was like a pest. He was like he'd get in his face, stuff like that. So Hanslick's in the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. And he wrote or said in an interview, Woody Paige is the worst athlete ever go into the Sports Hall of Fame. And so I responded at the dinner saying, "Yes, I'm so happy to break Bill Hanslick's record as being the worst athlete to go into the Hall of Fame." But people would know Peyton Manning, and Peyton Manning's in it. There are people from, I'm the third person from Tennessee to actually be in the, although you can count Peyton Manning as being from New Orleans and growing up in the South Mississippi. But Peyton Manning, Todd Helton, and I are guys that went to Tennessee. They're in the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. So that was very meaningful for me. But when I got up to speak, I said to the people 2 things. One will be my only political statement. I said, I've been here tonight for almost 3 hours, and I'm 77 years old, and I didn't fall asleep. I'm a candidate to become president of the United States. And the people laughed at that. That was my only political statement. It will be my only political statement to you, except I want to watch the debate tomorrow night. That you asked me what I was going to do on my birthday. I'm going to watch the debate. I'm going to go to a club and hang out. Anyway, so I said, Hall of Famers come back. Tom Jackson, who you covered during your career, Randy Gradishar, some of the Olympic greats. Peggy Fleming was there that night. It's about 100 of the former inductees to the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. And I got up in front of them. They were on the dais, gigantic dais, and there were about 1,500 people. And I said, I don't deserve to be in the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. And I said, there are 100 people behind me that agree with that statement. And they were all nodding, going, "Yeah, you don't belong in this because you don't put media people." And I had kind of turned it down a couple of times because I didn't think media people belong in the Hall of Fame. But what I thought...
You're more than that, buddy. You're more than a media.
I only bring this up because you would appreciate this, that the Baseball Hall of Fame has a writers wing.
Yeah.
And they put people in. And so does the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And that's what I thought, state hall, sports hall of fames, like Florida, I'm sure has one, should just create another area for contributors,
medias and stuff.
media people, SIDs,
Right.
people like that. Because I think you belong in the Florida Sports Hall of Fame because of your, having gone there, your accomplishments and achievements in and out of sports in journalism. I mean, you've covered hurricanes, you've covered major events. Your papers were involved with covering a very intricate part of 9/11 because the pilots were trained near where you were living, if I remember correctly. That they were pilots. They were guys who went to a school to learn how to fly planes, and they were the guys who actually.
We got nominated for the Pulitzer for our news coverage on that, and unfortunately, the story that beat us out was the fact that the governor of New Jersey was gay. That's what won the Pulitzer. Anyways. But anyway, that's what I haven't had a chance to congratulate you publicly for that honor. I would have loved to have been there for you that night because you and I have a lot of skin in this game, and you're phenomenal. You're a phenomenal person, phenomenal writer, and also a phenomenal media person, savvy. So you were always ahead of the game. You're always on the cutting edge. And I had such wonderful times with you, the people we met, the things we did. We were kind of on the cutting edge. I have a friend who wants to ask a question about that. He's a Memphis guy. He lives up there now. When you get a minute, I'd like to pop him on. He's interested in writers. He wants to ask you about our writing career. But before we do that, let me just say that I wanted to get your take on something inconsequential like sports.
Well, I would like to mention, though, that I've been doing ESPN and a show called Barnhart for 22 years. And I think that's what people in Florida, they don't know me as a journalist. Yeah. People around the country know me because of a blackboard that's behind me down the horn, and I've been doing that. I think that's probably my most memorable meaning in journalism, if you want to call it that, but being a commentator on ESPN and doing 6 shows for them for the last 20 plus years.
I was trying to think how long you've been, because Bennett Solon, who is the son of your boss, just graduated from Florida.
Oh yeah.
There are 3 Solomons that graduated from journalism school.
Yeah, and I think my producer at interned for you. He told me something.
For briefly, he wanted other things, but he did.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I would just say about that show, and that it's been on over 20 years, and I've done 3,000 episodes.
Wow, 3,000.
I looked up Johnny Carson one day, and I went, I've done more shows than Johnny Carson.
Wow.
That's an amazing feat that it's been on that long, and it's an amazing feat that I've been a part of it for so long, and they actually keep bringing me back, and that's one of the reasons why I don't retire. I don't want to end up being there when I'm Dick Vitale, who's making a comeback, and I'm happy to hear that, and we're good friends, and you know his sister Carrie Vitale lives in Colorado, and it's been a magazine publisher. And Dick, as people probably know, has breakfast at a restaurant in Sarasota every day of his life, but he's had throat cancer a couple of times. And not only has he raised so much money, you mentioned Albuquerque and the Final Four that we covered, that Dick Vitale has raised millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for the Jimmy V Foundation.
Yeah.
The coach at North Carolina State who won this national championship, was probably the biggest upset when he upset Phi Slama Gamma in Albuquerque.
Right.
I have great respect for him, but he's older than me, and there's a former coach that you know and aware of. It's on college game day every Saturday. And the two of them, I think, are the 2 oldest, other than me and Bob Ryan. And you know Bob Ryan.
I know Bob,
So I'm thankful and honored that I've been able to do we're on in 187 countries, and they're on about 5 times a day because they're
Wow.
in all the stations. And we've had millions of people. I have a funny story about that. That's why I would tell you. So I go to a golf course, and there's a father and a son that are playing. And the father comes over and says, "You win, Paige." What? He said, "Son, come over here." His son's like 14 years old. He said, "Son, this is the greatest writer in the history of Colorado. He has been the greatest writer for 30 years, 35 years, whatever." He said, "You should read his stuff." And the son's laughing. And he said, "Don't laugh. He is the best journalist that's ever been in Colorado." And the son said, "I watch him every day on Around the Horn." Father said, "You're on television?" And I said, "This is a collision of the opposing worlds here, that the son is laughing because he watches me on TV. The father doesn't know I'm on TV because he has a job."
Yeah.
And the son is never going to read a newspaper.
Yeah.
And so and I went, that might be one of my best compliments ever, where neither one
They didn't know you were.
but neither one of them knew what else I did in life.
Yeah, I remember when you first started this on the show, we were at the Masters. You said, "Buddy, you won't believe this, but it's amazing. I get stopped by every 15-year-old in the street." Remember? Yeah, because you were so unique. And you had all this huge following of young people.
I have an interesting. Our favorite writer, yours and mine, I mentioned Jim Murray, was Dan Jenkins out of Texas, and wrote for Sports Illustrated a few years ago.
Yeah.
Dan Jenkins, who passed away not terribly long ago. And so you and I would have breakfast with Dan Jenkins at the Masters on the back porch of Augusta National. And journalists could do that. And we could look out on the 18th green, and there was a great tradition that we'd meet with Dan Jenkins. And Dan, the greatest, funniest sports books in history. A lot of them were made into movies. And so a guy at the next table sits down and looks over at us, and he said, "Guys, do you mind if I smoke?" And I looked at him, I said, "Do you mind if I fart?" And Jenkins pulled out his notebook, and you know this story because you were close then. And he wrote that in his little notebook. He would write the lines and stuff. So his book comes out, and like in the first chapter, guy sits down and goes, "Yeah, pardon me, do you mind if I smoke?" And the lead character says, "You mind if I fart?"
Yeah.
and so that was one of my great honors in life, that Dan Jenkins.
Yeah, be quoted by Dan Jenkins.
Take one of my lines, but that's the kind of fun we had.
We did.
I'll tell people back when we used typewriters, and I got my last typewriter I'm in my office.
Yeah.
I got my first typewriter when I was in the 5th grade, and I still have it. And I have my last typewriter, which is an old Royal typewriter. And we would sit in this Quonset hut in Augusta, Georgia, and it would rain and it would flood into it, and we'd write. Good thing we didn't have electricity, because we'd all been electrocuted.
Yeah.
But we'd sit there, there'd be maybe 100 of us, and you could hear the click-clack of the typewriter. And so Buddy Martin reached over to me one day and he said, "I've just written a poem." I said, "A poem? We're at the Masters. What are you doing writing a poem?" And he goes, "Do you remember the poem you wrote?" See?
Yep.
We're doing a dimension.
Clack, right?
Sitting in the press room at Augusta National, you hear the clack, 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 producing crap, crap, crap. And I thought that was the funniest poem I've ever heard since maybe something written in Shakespearean times of English. So I would much rather tell those stories at the times we had together.
Well, a lot of people remember you. Here's Robert, our regular guy, says he's can't remember which one. USA Today, he thinks no. Games of Sun, no. Bobby, no. ESPN magazine. No, actually, you read the Denver Post. Well, you can tell us.
Memphis Commercial, People, Rocky Mountains.
All that stuff.
I wrote for the Knoxville Journal. I was sports editor of the White Haven Press, which was a weekly paper.
Right.
I wrote in high school. That's how I met Spurrier. I went to some in high school. I went to some conference that outstanding students would go to.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, we lived in Eastern Tennessee, and I think the convention was at the University of Tennessee when we were in high school.
Yeah.
And I met this guy, and he said he's the greatest quarterback ever to come out of Tennessee. And I went, Charlie Fulton. You should remember Charlie Fulton. He played for Tennessee and in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah.
Coached for years under Doug Dickey when Dickey left Tennessee.
Oh yeah.
Charlie Fulton was the last tailback in the history of college football at a major program. Tennessee ran under General Neyland. Robert Neyland was an incredible coach. But they ran the single wing when people were never running that anymore. And Charlie Fulton was recruited to be a single wing tailback, and they switched to quarterback. He's quarterback, and he ended up in Florida as a coach under Doug Dickey when Dickey went there. He was the quarterback coach in Florida. Yeah. You probably don't even know that. I know more about Florida football than you know about Tennessee football.
Yeah. Hey, Woody is up. I want to say
that's you could erase that because that's I didn't work for USA Today games. But that's you.
No, they didn't. And everybody thought Dan Jenkins did too. Here's the deal. I got a couple of guys here I want to get in here, and one of them is wants to ask you a quick question, and the other guy is Tony Barnhart. And I want to pop in here. Rob is our friend and hosts the show with myself and Brendan, and he's in Memphis, Cherry Valley. He's fascinated with this the fascinated with writing and writers. Let's bring him in. Say hello to Rob. And Rob, this is Woody. What question did you want to ask him? I got to get on and ask a question.
What do you do? What do you do, Robert?
We have a show, Buddy and I and Brendan. It's called SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU.
I've talked to you before, because I remember your accent.
Well, growing up in Memphis, I will say this: without the writers like you and Buddy, which I grew up in Memphis reading the Commercial Appeal, Mike Fleming, George Lapidus, Al Dunning, Bobby Hall, Larry Ray, we wouldn't know about the athletes. So hell yeah, you belong in the Hall of Fame. That's absolutely you do, because I hang on every word. Tony Barnhart is on our show a lot, and Buddy's helping make our show. So I'm just going to defer my time. I just want to hear more of your stories. I have been I love this, and I'm so proud that you're from Memphis, and your stories about Elvis are true. That's what everybody in Memphis that really knew him. And that's the real thing. So I appreciate it. I just want to hear more about you.
When I was in high school, and I had a relationship with Elvis forever because I was his first fan. I mean, I was like 4 years old in the front porch while he was singing.
Wow.
And kid, and so he always remembered me. So when I was in high school at Whitehaven High School in Memphis, right down the street from Graceland, I'd go over there because I knew those security people from Tupelo because of my dad.
Yeah.
And Elvis told me to put together a touch football team. Quick story. And he said, Elvis wants to play touch football. And so I put together a bunch of my friends, and we played at the junior high school, and they brought jerseys. And one said, Presley's Panthers or something, and the other said Woody's Woodpeckers or something. And we played. And one of the security guards, the Memphis Mafia, who were his posse, came over and said, whatever you do not tackle Elvis if he gets the ball. Okay, well, it's touch football. We're not going to tackle him. I mean, don't tackle him. Whatever you do, don't tackle him. Well, he goes out for a pass, and he was a mama's boy. He was not really an athlete. He goes out for a pass, they throw it to Elvis, and we're all backing off, and he hits a hole that's turf had come up.
Wow.
And he falls, and he lands on his thumb, and he breaks his thumb. And people are screaming and hollering to go over to him because you can't break your thumb, you're a guitarist. And the other half of the people are coming over to us screaming at us, we told you not to tackle him. And I said, he fell down. So it became you can actually go on the internet and see the story of him playing in the touch football game. It was a big story where he had to have a cast put on his entire hand. And I got blamed for it. You brought in these thugs to play against Elvis. You mentioned all that. Buddy, a story you never heard. So my first job when I went from covering civil rights, and they wanted to groom me as a sports columnist, and I covered civil rights and the assassination of Dr. King. And they said, we'll put you in sports. And so the sports editor's first assignment to me is football season. On Friday, you are going to go to a small high school town in West Arkansas, northern Mississippi, western Tennessee, and you're going to write about the community and the football team. And I said, well, that sounds good. And so a photographer and I would go every week, and then on Saturday I'd go cover an Arkansas game or Mississippi State or Ole Miss or Tennessee, because we covered Tennessee. Memphis State was actually the second tier team that we covered. So I go to a town in Mississippi, buddy, and every town would welcome me and the photographer like 60 Minutes that showed up. I mean, they were so excited that the commercial appeal was actually coming to Grenada, Mississippi or someplace like that. And so one day I got there and they were having a parade downtown because it was homecoming weekend. And I went, wow, this is great. Where's the photographer? Well, he got there late after the parade. And that would be a big picture. We'd do a full page on this, salute this small town and its high school team. And the photographer said, oh, yeah, I got traffic and I ran out of gas and stuff. And the mayor said, we'll do the parade over again. So they got everybody and ran the parade through town again. And they got great pictures.
I remember that story. You told me.
People the next day, the editors at the Commercial Appeal said, what great, they didn't talk about the story. They said, boy, what great pictures you got of the parade, because he was on the top of a building and you could see the whole downtown scene. But we're
going to say goodbye to Rob real quick. Thanks, Rob.
But I just want to say, okay, no mind.
The reason I say that is this guy's waiting to ask you a question too.
Oh, well.
You know this guy, Tony Barnhart, right?
Yeah. How you doing, Tony?
Woody, it's great to see you, my man.
Great to hear you and see you. Better shirt. You have a better shirt on than the two of us.
There's always a special place in my heart for all of us who grew up in the newspaper business. When you try to tell people what it was like when newspapers were at their zenith, they don't believe you. And I always tell this. The great Van McKenzie hired me in Atlanta, Woody.
Sure.
And
he worked for. Didn't he work for you for a while, buddy?
3 different places.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was the editor in Dallas. The sports editor in Dallas too.
No, he was Atlanta. He was also the National Sports Daily, and he worked for me in the Daily News and the St. Pete Times and Cocoa.
Tony, I would say he was one of the elite. It's a good word. It's overused, but he was one of the elite sports journalists that people didn't know about.
Well, what I will never forget about that. This is the 1984 when I came to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and what I found out was, yes, we had a travel budget, but you could we were the only team that had unlimited travel budget and managed to outspend it every year.
Man, definitely did that.
Yeah, I got an offer when I was at the Commercial Appeal to go to the Atlanta Constitution, but in this what you're talking about, the period you're talking about, and the managing editor of the Constitution said, we have 2 old columnists in town, Norman Bisher and Jesse Outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Jesse is going to retire soon, and so I'd like to hire you. He offered me $5 more than I was making in Memphis. And I go back and I tell my young wife, I said, man, we're going to go to Atlanta. All the Tennessee people that I went to school with were go migrate to Atlanta, because Atlanta was, was the big city of the South. And I was so excited about that job. And she said, well, what kind of raise are you giving me? I said, $5 more a week. And you're talking about it, outliving the expenses, outspending the expenses. They were penny pinchers at that time. And I got an offer from the Rocky Mountain News, and they said, we'll give you $10,000 more a week. And so, or a year, $10,000 more a year. And so I called the Atlanta Constitution. There's a funny end to this story, since I didn't get the end of the other story. funny end of this story. So I turned down the job in Atlanta and took the one in Denver, which turned my life around. But the guy who took the job that they offered to me was a guy named Louis Grisard.
Whatever happened to him?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's the funny story, that there wouldn't have been a Louis Grisard because there would have been a Woody Paige. It would have been just
Paige, yeah.
sure. But
I wanted Tony to come over tonight and talk a little about your balls and baseball, although he didn't cover baseball that much. But we couldn't help with all the stuff going on there with Tony Vitello, the coach there, and now with the story today about Texas hiring away Texas A&M.
Texas, which became a bigger story than Tennessee winning.
Yeah, it did.
And it was all because he just lied to a reporter. You know, he treated a reporter like crap.
Right.
And had to backtrack it today, saying that, you know, he shouldn't have said it what he did, but he didn't really totally apologize to the reporter. But, you know, he told the reporter, it's not. I mean, that was a natural story that he would leave the Aggies to go to the Longhorns.
Yep.
That's the question, the right question. And because media is treated so poorly in this country now, I mean, we're lower than used car. So, I think we were treated with respect, Tony, when newspapers were the paramount media form.
Are you kidding me, Woody? I mean, people lived in fear of Furman Bisher. Are you kidding me? You did not cross Furman Bisher, or you would pay a cost. And I care a great deal about Furman. He's one of my mentors, but I'm just talking about that era, the 40s and 50s and the 60s.
Recrimination.
The
columnists were the most powerful people, media people in the country.
Sure. Walter Stewart was that in David Bloom in Memphis, and the same held true. And that was what my dream was. I mean, people go, well, people ask me. I once asked Dikembe Mutombo, the famous basketball player from Africa, and I said, "Did you dream about growing up to be a basketball player?" And he said, "I couldn't dream beyond He spoke 7 languages, and he said, "I couldn't dream beyond the end of the road."
Right.
He said, "I couldn't dream. We couldn't dream of being on ESPN." And what happened with ESPN? And this is when newspapers were still strong. The reason why people like me, Bob Ryan, the best columnist in the country now is Bill Plaschke in Los Angeles, who wins the award every year. Guys like that grew up in the newspaper business. ESPN wanted to legitimize by hiring columnists to go on ESPN that people trusted or believed in, and you would be honest and objective and have opinions, strong opinions and stuff like that. So newspapers then, the migration of columnists to doing radio talk shows, local TV, being analyst on local shows. I tell you guys, the other guy wanted to hear stories, but when the Memphis Pros were in the ABA, the local station came to me and said, "We're going to televise 5 of their away games." And I went, "Congratulations, I'll do a story on that. They're going to be on television." And he said, "No, we want you to be the analyst." And I said, "What is an analyst?" I had no idea. Well, there's a play-by-play guy, like on the radio, and then he's going to be an analyst. And you know more about the Memphis Pros than anybody, and you cover pro basketball. I'll make a short story. So we had the first game they played the Indiana Pacers, and we were having a pregame show, and the play-by-play guy said to me, "So what do you think about the competition at center tonight?" And I said, "Well, that's a good question, because you got the young center in Memphis, and you got the elderly center in and I hear God talk to me, and God said to me," he used some strange words. God said to me, "You got 2 minutes to wrap it up." And I turned around because there was nobody there. So I just imagined I had this thing in my ear that looked like a hearing aid. And I went, "Okay, I'll do that." And he goes, "Don't respond to me." "Okay, all right."
Yeah,
I got to ask another question. And I hear God again talking to me. So they said, "Go to a break." And I went, "Go to a break." I just said whatever God said to me. And so we went to a commercial break, and out of the truck in the parking lot, this guy comes running into the arena and goes, "What in the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm the guy talking to you." I said, "Oh, I thought that was God talking to me. I didn't know anything about television." And I said, he said, "I'm talking to you through an IFB." And I said, "Oh, that's what that thing in my ear is. I thought it was for me to hear better, because there'd be crowd noise." And he said, "Do not respond to me. I am giving you instructions." And I went, now being on Around the Horn for 22 years, I have producers talking to me all the time. Directors are talking to me, and I have to talk on national TV while people are talking to me.
Yeah, it's hard.
And I was trained, and I now know it wasn't God that was speaking to me.
There you go.
The guy in the truck outside. But going
Yeah,
back to what you said, the newspapers were so important to society, and they've lost that importance, particularly in what I would say middle type cities like Atlanta or Memphis or something. There's still the New York Times, and there's still the Washington Post and LA Times. But the significance of newspapers in St. Petersburg, where we had friends that worked, and in Houston and places like that, no longer are the columnists. And that goes back to what the Texas A&M baseball coach.
Yeah, I'll get to that real quick if I can. I want to say that I'm having someone talk in my ear and say, "Buddy, you idiot, you've gone 45 minutes without any of your commercials." So I'm just going to say it right now. We're going to go commercial free tonight. Woody's going to pay the tab. And thank you to our three sponsors. One of them, Melbourne Law. They don't back down. And Titan MRI. And also Registrar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. And Woody, today things are kind of messed up. And
please support the commercials. There's one question on the thing. Did I ever write for the Sporting News? I wrote a column for the Sporting News for years and years, and I thought, speaking of media, I thought the Sporting News was the Bible in regard to baseball. And I was paid $35 a column. And Bob Ryan was writing the NBA, and I was writing the ABA, and then they had me writing a column, and I thought that was going to be the height of my career, to write for the Sporting News, because I did it every week and read every box score and read all the stories.
Yeah.
And I wrote for Sport Magazine. You're not old enough, Tony, but Buddy and I are old enough to remember the Sport Magazine.
Dick Schaab was my editor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was bigger than Sport. That was bigger than Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
Kurt Vonnegut was trying to find a job, and Sports Illustrated gave him a job and said, "You are to write the captions, what we would call cut lines, captions under the photos." And so that first day on the job, he dresses up, and Kurt Vonnegut wants to make enough money to take care of his family and maybe write a book or something someday. And they hand him an equestrian event. And so the horse is, man's on the horse jumping over hedges. And so he looks at that and he goes, "This is what I'm going to do here." And he wrote his cut line, and I'll clean it up. He said, "The bleeping horse and the bleeping rider are jumping over the bleeping hedges." And he turned it into the editor and he said, "I quit." And so in order to finance his family, he went off and wrote a book called Player Piano, which ended up being his first bestseller. And he wrote one of the greatest writers in the history of this country. I mean, I put Kurt Vonnegut in there with Mark Twain, and writers of that ilk. But sports writers became, I think, in the towns and cities, the sports columnists became the voice. And I know when I started writing a column, I wanted to write what I thought I'd want to read. If that makes sense to you guys. What is it I want to read about? What is my opinion if I were a reader? And growing up in the South, as we did, all of us, we were taught by our parents honesty. And I think that was what was prevalent in journalism then, was honesty. today with websites and blogs and everything, honesty is the last thing that actually is important. I'm amazed that I read Google every day, and every sports story starts, what if X player was traded for 2 draft choices? And you go, well, what player are they talking about? You read 18 paragraphs, you still don't know, because they want you to read the whole story. Well, the way you got people to read the whole story is to write a great lead and actually.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, that's,
Hey, what do you think of this right here, Woodrow? This particular graphic I want to show you. What is that?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that looks like Texas A&M to me, Woodrow, right there. It's big.
Not quite.
Yeah, miss it. And here's one for you, Woody. I've been saving this all week long. Texas and Tennessee. Which is the real UT, Woody?
I had a sports editor that came from Texas, and his first column he was about a country and western team called T is for Texas, T is for Tennessee.
Yeah.
You remember country music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I would ask the two of you, I think the most important issue as I wind down my career over the next few years is what's going to happen in college football. Mm-hmm. And
well, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's have a little conversation about that.
Yeah, I think that's more important in my stories that I'd like to get. You two guys are embedded, and I say that you're embedded in the Southeastern Conference, and we do have a situation in Colorado that's pretty interesting. You have Leon here doing something that really hasn't been done. Where I mean, he just basically gets rid of last year's squad and brings in. It doesn't even try to recruit players. He said there was a player in Florida, and someone said, "You got to go visit one of the 3 top recruits in Florida." And he said, "No, if his family wants to see me, they need to come to my house." And that's, recruiting has been the tool of every major successful company.
What's going to happen in Colorado, Woody? What's going to happen there? Yeah, Shedeur, the whole Shedeur thing has calmed down a little bit now. About all them having to go to see him rap or something. What happened there?
No, the kid is an outstanding quarterback. He got beat up last year because one of the things they didn't recruit was an offensive line. And so, I mean, he led the world in being not only sacked, but being almost killed in every game. And they got away with it early on because Baylor wasn't the team it was in the national championship, and they beat Colorado State with the seconds to go, and they get off to a 3-0 start, and then they hit those Pac-12 teams that were good, Oregon's, the Bo Nixons of the world, and Penix at Washington, and they couldn't play against them. So they have recruited defensive linemen and offensive linemen this year, but everybody assumes he's going to go to the NFL, and he just keeps saying, and I believe he plays around with the language, but I think that he's honest about that. I don't think he wants to go to the pros because he's got a system that kind of works because these players have great respect for Deion, and they want. And if they can't, what's happening? That's why I said college football is a story because now you guys know when we were young, we spent 4 years in college. Well, 2 things have happened. One, the NFL's drafting underclassmen, which didn't happen. And so now you can leave when you're sophomore or junior, whatever you might want to do. And secondly, recruiting has kind of gone out the window because players have said, if I'm not going to start my first year, I'm going to go somewhere else. And I might go somewhere else 3 times. And I might go to Auburn. And I'll spend 2 years at Auburn, and then I'll spend 4 more years at Oregon. And then I'll be a first-round draft choice. And the payment of players, when you're talking about Shedeur, he's paid more than probably 10 quarterbacks in the league from the NIL. So because his kids are going to leave, no, I think he's recruiting for the near future. I think the only job he'd take in the NFL, honestly, would be the Dallas Cowboys. He's a playmaker. He's not going to take a job.
Really? Right. Well, Tony's old, and Tony's on Eastern time, and Tony gets his milk and cookies usually about this time of night.
Yeah, that's right.
So if I don't get him to bed, he'll miss his milk and cookies.
There you go.
Before he does, I want to say to him, Tony, can you sum up for Woody, since you're the sort of the college football and the SEC situation, how it's going to be different? We know about obviously the playoffs. Tell us what Saban not being here will mean. Give us your summation of what you see coming from the SEC media days. We have that coming up in a couple of weeks. Give us an assessment of the SEC.
Well, where you start is obviously when you add Texas and Oklahoma, two of the iconic brands in all of sport, not only just for football, but for a lot of other different sports. The best women's softball program in the country, baseball. So these two sports are add a hell of a lot to the conference. When it comes to football, what's going to be different this year is for the first time since 1992, there will be no divisional play in the SEC. 16 teams, one division, top two teams play in the SEC Championship. So that's a big change. And everybody in the conference for the first 2 years, you have to play either Texas or Oklahoma in each of those 2 years. So that's a big change right there. The other big change, and I think this is the two biggest stories in college football, guys, are the fact that for the first time in 17 years, Nick Saban's not going to be coaching college football. And it changes a lot. And it changed a lot at the University of Alabama. How does that pan out? The other biggest story is the 12-team playoff, which changes everything. Because now, normally when we get to November, with the 14 playoff, there's 7 or 8 teams that may have a chance to get into the playoffs. Maybe 7 or 8. Now, with 12 teams and teams that are 10-2 are going to get in, maybe a 9-3 if they're good enough, we're going to be talking about 20 teams at the end of the year. And I think that's going to make all those games fascinating. So I said last year before the season started, I told people, I said, look, enjoy the 2023 season. Because after that, college football will change forever. Now, it's still going to be great. It's still going to be fun. It's still going to be an incredible product that delivers every Saturday. But it's just going to be different, and a lot of people are going to have to adjust to that.
All right, let me ask you then, Woody, college football, better or worse next couple of years? Tony?
I think it's going to be better. There's so many great players out there, and now they're spread out because of the transfer portal. They're spread out. Nobody can hog all the great players like Alabama and the folks used to do. They won't be able to do it quite as much. Now, are fans going to not like what some of the stuff they see? Yeah. I think that's true. But I think the game that's played on the field is as good as it's ever been.
And I approach it in a different way, Tony. I say worse, and I'm not saying worse than 2023. The game is worse than it was when we were young. I liked the Southwest Conference. Now there hasn't been a Southwest Conference forever, but the Southwest Conference has been integrated into the Southeastern Conference. And the Pac-12 the Pac-12 has basically gone away, and now is hooked up with a non-Power 5 conference, the Southwest Conference. And what's going on with the ACC, teams wanting to go somewhere else. Notre Dame's the only one that's kind of sitting there saying, we're just going to be us, we'll kind of associate with the ACC. I don't like, the coaches brought up, the SEC coaches brought up, including Saban, and the ACC coaches about paying players. And you could have prevented this if you paid the players $25,000 a year. Because when I was in school at Tennessee, athletes got $30 a month for laundry. And that was kind of a quote in quotes. They used the $30 to eat or go on a date or something. They could have prevented guys getting $5 million. Peyton Manning's nephew, for instance, what Sanders is getting. but they didn't take action ahead of time. It's not the transfer portal is a big up. Changing the conferences now is pardon me. It's a terrific mess. I'll go a totally different way about it. It's just convoluted. I don't like it. It's worse. And I am for a playoff. I think there's too many teams in the playoff. I'm for it. But with all of the negatives going on in college football, this is a worse game. I mean, do you really want, if you're the ACC or the SEC, do you really want to be playing teams that belong in historically situations, belong in other leagues and other conferences? No. The SEC, you're talking about all the nuances of, not having divisions and stuff. The SEC is just, it's overpowering to me.
They got to overpower each other. They play each other all the time. And
I want to see Ole Miss play Mississippi State. I want Tennessee to play Alabama. I don't want that you have to play Texas and Oklahoma. I think it's difficult for the fans. It's going to expend. The expense of going to games and away games. It's very easy in the Southeastern Conference if Florida and Georgia are playing. You get in a car, you drive to the game, you get tickets. Now, if one of those teams is having to play those teams, Texas A&M every year, and Oklahoma and Texas, how are you going to go to the games? The guys, got a middle class income, and with playoffs,
they're cut out.
Right. Yeah,
I just think you've eliminated a lot of teams in the country that I like. And I mentioned the Mountain West Conference. I like those teams. They play an exciting kind of brand of football, throwing the ball around. The BYUs of the world and Colorado States and Air Force running every play. Nobody's going to pay any attention to them. They haven't paid much attention. I just don't like the game of college football anymore. I thought it was such a better game than the NFL. And I've covered the NFL since 1970. College football was a great game because there was a closeness. You had 4 years with a player. You had 5 years with a coach. You had fans that could get involved and go on the road, go to bowl trips. Now, a playoff, if you are, and I'm not picking on the state, but I'll take Nebraska. Those people save up. They're farmers, and they save up, and they go to a bowl game. Now they're going to have to go to 3 games. They're going to have to take away from Christmas from their families. I'm not trying to make anybody feel sorry. They don't have to go to all those games. But one thing that's NCAA basketball, we love the big dance. Well, in the first couple rounds, the big dance has about 78% of its seats empty. So think about that. Oh, we look at the Final Four and we go, wow, what an atmosphere. They're playing in a football stadium. There's 50,000 people. The weekends they're playing in Salt Lake City, there might be 6,000 people in the stands because you can't come from Connecticut to Salt Lake City, then next you're going to Albuquerque, and then next you're going to St. Louis, and then you're going to the finals. It affects the fans. It affects alumni who grew up with something else. It affects the coaches because they're now getting paid so much money they got to move around all the time. It affects the players because they're thinking transfer portal. I mean, imagine if Peyton Manning was just taken, since he's lives right over there. That Peyton Manning, if he hadn't been able to start at Tennessee, and he wasn't the kind of guy he was, that Peyton Manning might have been at Texas A&M for the rest of his career, or gone to Ole Miss and played. I just don't, Tony. All of what you're saying makes total sense, and is very smart, and comes from an intelligent angle. What I'm saying is outlandish, but I don't like the game anymore. I don't care.
All right. We have won again at 1-4. We're running down to the last 30 seconds. I want to thank both of you, by the way, Woody. Thank you. It's good to be with you again.
It's great to be on with both of you guys. And
you have a happy birthday tomorrow, my friend. All the best to you. I'll be raising my glass tomorrow and thinking about you. Appreciate all that you've done and all that you are. Good friend, and thank you for your time.
And I'll raise my glass to the two guys and the other people who participated, but I also raise my glass to the SEC in 1984.
Yeah, I remember going to Folsom Field and we were sitting there and you looked at me and said, these people think this is a big crowd, 45,000. They ain't seen
Oh
anything
my!
in the SEC, remember? We sit there, they don't know football
There's
around.
nothing like football in the SEC. Between the hedges and to go to the swamp and to go to the Rocky
LSU.
or Smoky Mountains and play and
Yeah,
and the SEC was togetherness. And I know I've taken up your time, but I just don't think that this unweldiness is not good for college football. I mean, when West Virginia, I don't even know what league they're in now. West Virginia's in the Big Ten, I think. I don't know. Who knows?
They're in the Big 12. Yeah.
they're still a Big 12, yeah.
Yeah, they're in the Big 12. That's even worse than the Big 12.
You're gonna need a map. What do we got, buddy?
Well, that's as good as Stanford being in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
I mean, how do you write, Tony, or say, or do a talk show and say, well, we got the big natural rivalry coming up. It's West Virginia versus Southern Cal. You go, is this the Rose Bowl? No.
I told a group the other night, I said, first of all, folks, if you want to follow because I laid out what school every conference, what conference every school was in. I said, if you were geographically challenged, don't listen to this. Okay. You'll only get a headache.
Sure.
Well, you know those maps. Sorry, buddy. You know those maps that'll show, oh, here's the Southwestern Conference and here's the Big Ten, and they're up all.
Yeah.
And now the map is it looked like the gerrymandering.
Yeah, it does, like a Republican gerrymandering map. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, Woody. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, Tony. Be in touch.
Very good. Happy birthday, Woody.
Yeah, man, have a good one. Take care.
Over under on me is 2, so I'd take the under. In terms of how long I'm going to live.
All right, buddy. Have a good one tomorrow. Enjoy your time. All right. Thanks, I'll be in touch. Woody Paige. All right. Happy birthday. All right, folks. Thank you for that. We're over time and we didn't get our commercials in. We'll just say thank you again to our 3 fine sponsors. Meldon Law. You know all about them. They don't back down. Jeffrey Meldon. TitanMRI.com, where you can go and get good treatment, get your own tailor-made appointments. And Rinstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. It's been a good night. I know it's a little difficult sometimes to follow a long show with people talk, but it's so honored to have Woody here and so glad to have Tony and have Rob checking in on it. So we're back tomorrow night with what's this? Tomorrow night with Orange and Blue Buds, and Ben will be back in the gang. So have a good one. Thank you, and thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.